to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show with Corey and Justin. Here they are, the Fourth and Long Fantasy Brothers.
Welcome to episode 20 of the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. My name is Corey, and I'm here with my actual brother, Justin.
Hello, this is Justin.
Episode 20. We are at the big 20th episode right now, so here we come. It's coming in fast. Justin, we are going to start things off with our very first head coach being let go.
Yeah, and you probably think that I'm going to say Adam Gase, but no, it's actually Bill O'Brien, the head coach and GM of the Houston Texans, was fired. I think it was honestly overdue. Bill O'Brien's made some questionable GM decisions over the last couple of years, right? I mean, you look back at his trade for Duke Johnson. You look at the trade he just made this past offseason, giving up DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. It's been a track record of subpar moves from a GM perspective. Their draft picks really haven't worked out to their favor. Honestly, it's about time. I'll be curious to see how the Texans offense and kind of the team collectively rebounds from this. I mean, Bill O'Brien kind of set them in a hole, right? They're without their first round and their second round pick this year. It'll be interesting, man, to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, you hear about situations, Justin, where it's like, why don't owners give, coaches, full control, GM and coach, why don't they do that more often? Look how it works out with guys like Bill Belichick and stuff like that. Well, here's the other side of things, right? Bill O'Brien took the reins of everything inside of the Houston organization and has really sort of torpedoed that franchise right now. And if not for Deshaun Watson, boy, their future would look bleak, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I heard that Romeo Crennel is going to kind of take over the head coaching role here, offensive duties as well. I think Bill O'Brien will probably find another job. He wasn't a terrible coach. I mean, he had the Texans in the playoffs multiple times. He had a winning record cumulatively over his tenure with the Texans. He'll find another job.
Yeah, whether it's in an offensive coordinator situation on a good offense or whether it is on a team that is rebuilding, I certainly don't think we have seen the last of Bill O'Brien. But Justin, let's move forward and let's talk about some injuries that hit us this week. This was not as bad as a couple weeks ago, but this was a pretty bad week for injuries. Get us started with probably the biggest name on the list, and that's Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, MCL injury. They're saying he's going to be out for the next 6 weeks. Terrible news for the young back here. He was looking really, really solid in his first couple weeks here with the Cleveland Browns. Kareem Hunt's the RB1 man. I think he could be a week-to-week winner here over the next 5 to 6 weeks while Chubb heals up.
And Justin, there's another guy that was drafted as an RB1, and that's Austin Ekeler, and he went down this week too.
Yeah, it didn't look good for Austin Ekeler. He immediately went down, grabbed his hamstring, saying it was a pretty significant hamstring strain. He was in a knee brace and on crutches after the game. They're saying he's going to be out several weeks. Kelly and Jackson should shoulder the load here for the Chargers.
Justin, let's talk about the land that is filled with tight ends, and one of them has just gone down in Tampa, and that's O.J. Howard.
Yeah, terrible news for O.J. Howard, a torn Achilles. He's done for the season. Is it Gronk time now? I don't know, man.
Yeah, it might be. And another tight end from Denver went down as well.
Yeah, Noah Fant went down on Thursday Night Football. Ankle injury. It's believed to be minor. There's no pickup here for Denver at this point.
Justin, one of my boldest takes before the season started when we did the top 5 things that will happen at this time next year was that Julio Jones will be supplanted by Calvin Ridley and will become a wide receiver 2 in drafts next year. That seemed crazy at the time, seeming a little more realistic right now. And especially when you consider, Justin, the injuries that he has had to deal with this year. Can you tell me about Julio Jones?
Yeah, Julio Jones, he had a hamstring strain. He missed last week, missed week 3. They put him out there week 4. He ended up not coming back out for the second half of the game. They said he re-aggravated his hamstring strain. They should have just held him out altogether. Look at how the Packers handled Devontae Adams and his hamstring issues. They should have just held Julio Jones out, got him fully healthy, and brought him back in a week or 2. The Falcons, man, look like a real big disaster so far this year. They've lost a lot of big leads. Corey, you're right. Calvin Ridley has really supplanted Julio Jones so far this season. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of season left, a lot of games left here in the 2020 season. But yeah, I mean, it's a great looking call so far. We'll be curious to see how Julio heals up here. Give him some time.
Is it Julio buy low time or is it time to pass on Julio?
I don't know, man. I've never really owned Julio until this year in one of our PPR leagues, and it's been frustrating to own him, man. I don't know that I necessarily would go out and buy him. You might be buying a guy that's going to be perpetually injured for the entire year. I don't know if I'd do that.
All right, Justin, last week we wanted to look at 2 situations for week 4, and we certainly did see a lot. We wanted to see what the Bears offense would look like under Nick Foles, and we wanted to see what Mike Davis would look like in his second showing as the Panthers' lead running back. One was good. One was really bad, Justin. Get us talking about the Bears offense.
Yeah, so let's start with the Bears offense. It did not look pretty this weekend against the Indianapolis Colts. And let's give credit where credit's due, right? Indy's defense looks for real this year. They definitely do. And the Bears did not look great this past Sunday. Now, start with Nick Foles. Nick Foles came in relief week 3 for Trubisky against the Falcons, ended up bringing the Bears back. That, dramatic come from behind win late in the game. Came into the week feeling pretty good about that offense. Did not look great for Nick Foles. Now, the one good takeaway that I saw from this past week, and the stats didn't really show it, but snap percentage for David Montgomery. I talked about him as well, with Tariq Cohen missing the rest of the season here with that knee injury. It was encouraging, man. He played 85% of the snaps. He ran a lot of routes out of the backfield. He looked gassed towards the end of the game. He's probably not used to playing 85% of the snaps, but if he can keep getting 80+% of the snaps here, that's elite territory, man, for a running back. I'm encouraged. I'll keep watching it. They've got a better matchup this week against the Bucs, who are a good defense. They kind of showed their colors this week, but I'm encouraged with the usage of Montgomery. I'm going to keep watching him. He's a solid RB2 in my mind from here on out.
Justin, a former Bears running back is Mike Davis, and Mike Davis has looked good subbing in for Christian McCaffrey. And from my eyes, it's not just been, oh, wow, he's been given an awesome role, but he looks like he's actually doing quite well in that role. And I think he's really making a case to join a committee next year in whatever offense might be bringing in a rookie or potentially saying goodbye to a veteran. Mike Davis really looks good in this Carolina offense. And, I imagine when McCaffrey's back, Mike Davis will fade away, but I don't think we've heard the last of him when it comes to his fantasy career.
Yeah, enjoy it for one more week, because I think they're saying McCaffrey could be back week 6 potentially. He comes off the IR. He gets the ability to come off of IR this next week. Enjoy the ride while you got it. He's an RB2, even a borderline RB1 this week in my mind.
Yeah, I really like what I've seen out of him. I really think he's going to have some type of role in an offense next year. Don't know what it will be, but this has been a really impressive showing. Good for Mike Davis. Well, Justin, with that being said, let's get to it.
On today's show,
all right, we continue our weekly format for you this week. Today, Justin and I will discuss the past, a present, and a future topic as we reflect on week 4 and we get you prepared for week 5 and those matchups. So, Justin, why don't you go ahead and get us started by talking about the running back situation in Arizona and how it's not exactly what we were expecting?
Yeah, so is it time to panic yet on Kenyan Drake? Oomph. I mean, man, Drake has really busted this season so far. Now, he was a second rounder in draft circles before the season, and it was really warranted, right? After he finished the year in 2019, it was justified. He has this high-flying Cardinals offense around him. He's got that second-year quarterback, and Kyler Murray looking to take another step forward here this season. And, the stars are really aligning on paper to lead to a really successful season here for Kenyan Drake, but it just hasn't happened, man. And I think one of the most concerning things with Drake is his target share when you look at it from 2020 compared to 2019. So let's look at his target share this year so far. So week 1, he had a 5.4% target share. Week 2, he was just over 6%. Week 3, he was down to 3%. And then week 4, which was this past week, he had no targets come his way, 0% target share. Now, last season, when he became a Cardinal, his target share only dropped below 10% once in 8 games. That's not good. That's not an encouraging trend, Corey, from my perspective. Now, you look at his running mate, Chase Edmonds. His target share has only dropped below 12% in 1 week so far this season. So that's kind of where you thought Drake was going to be when you drafted him in the second round. Now, I don't own Drake, right? But I'd be concerned if I did. The trend does not look great for this young running back. Now, if you're a Drake owner, you're holding, right? You're not going to get what you paid for. You're not going to get the value that you're looking for based on what you paid during the draft season. You're hoping that he breaks out like a guy like Joe Mixon did last week, and then I'd sell Drake, man, once that breakout game comes.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, Justin. I just think that Drake, for sure, I just think his offense has changed on him, and I feel like his role in this offense has changed on him, and I feel like he's not going to return the value. So once he does blow up, if there's someone who still believes in him, I agree. I think it's time to sell him for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, Corey, why don't you talk to us about a guy that really blew up this past weekend?
Yeah, Justin, let's talk about the fact that Odell Beckham Jr., about a week and a half ago or so, we got a report that Beckham comes out in an interview and says, hey, look, I've come to terms with the fact that the numbers are just not going to be there for me this year, okay? It's not as important as winning, and I am okay with that. And then what happened? Well, he put up a career day. 5 catches, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of them from Jarvis Landry, plus a superstar level end-around run, which resulted in a 60-yard touchdown scamper. He added on another 10 yards on the ground on top of that. It was an absolutely joyous performance to watch from a former fantasy darling. Now, if you've been patient with OBJ over the years, this is exactly what you knew was lurking this whole time. But if he's lost your trust, I get it, right? But this is exactly what the Browns expected when they got him. Now, let's talk about the honest truth here. It was against an atrocious Cowboys defense who, Justin, they just seem like they don't want to tackle this year. So we cannot assume that this is the new normal in Cleveland. But if you've been paying attention, the Browns have wanted to put OBJ at the center of the offense for weeks and weeks, and even last year. But this time it actually worked. Beckham should still be considered a wide receiver 2. I'm not saying this vaults him into the wide receiver 1 category, and he should stay there until further notice. But you have to know that this week winning upside still exists in Beckham. It's the first time we've really seen it. He had 1 week last week against the Jets where he really sort of came unglued. This was that week that we got used to seeing in New York. Now we're seeing it again. I'd love to see this continue. Just, play it carefully, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely showed that upside, right? The elite level week winning upside that he historically showed in his tenure with the New York Giants. It was an encouraging performance. It was funny to see Jarvis Landry's comments after he made that throw Monday morning. He said he woke up and he felt like he pitched 9 innings. Man, that was quite a dime that he threw to OBJ in the corner of the end zone there.
Yeah, that was a great throw and really just a great play design. And if more things like that can get working, I think we'll see more Odell Beckham blow-up games. I'm not counting on it because I think this offense is a run-first offense, and in most weeks it hasn't worked. But, it's there. And this is the Beckham that you decided to draft. Hopefully, if you had him, you won this week and you enjoyed the ride. Justin, a position that is definitely not a ride to enjoy is tight end, but we may have found a gem out there. He's on bye this week, but he is a really, really intriguing prospect and an intriguing potential fantasy asset.
Yeah, do the Packers finally have their tight end, right? It feels like since the days of Jermichael Finley back in the 2009, 2010 seasons, they've been trying to find a tight end that Rodgers can really trust. And man, I think Tonyan might be that guy. He's a big guy. He's 6'5", 240. He's built a lot like George Kittle, who just so happens to be one of his best buds, which I think is pretty funny. Now, Tonyan is tied with Mike Evans for the NFL lead in touchdowns at 5. He had 3 touchdowns on Monday Night Football. Looked really, really good. Looked like he had Rodgers' trust, which is a big thing. And the other thing I like about Tonyan is he's among the best in the league. He's got a 93% catch rate, which is really, really elite from my perspective as it relates to catch rates for tight ends. Now, he's making the most of his opportunities with Rodgers, who in his own right looks to be playing the best football of his career. The Packers offense in general looks really great. I mean, we came into the season thinking, man, they didn't add much on the offensive side, and they're really humming right now. But again, they did play the Falcons. We got to keep that in consideration. Now, as you said, Corey, the Packers are on bye this coming week, week 5, but Tonyan is my number 1 waiver wire ad this week. Get him now. You could be looking at the next great tight end. Now, Corey, I've had a pretty solid track record with waiver wire ads so far this year. I touted Jerick McKinnon as we approached week 3. I touted Damian Harris as we approached last week, week 4, and both have worked out really nicely. I feel like I can go 3 for 3 here with Tonyan. Now, Tonyan should be a priority for you. Get him a week early and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, Justin, I'm really intrigued by what he could be. And in such a volatile position like tight end, if you can find something like this, like pick him up. Maybe it won't work, but if you pick him up and you start him and he tends to have gained Rodgers' trust, like this is going to be a really fun ride. He's going to be a set it and forget it tight end. So it's worth it. He's not costing you much, hopefully. Go grab him because so many of your league mates are not going to be aware because they're just going to look at projections and, well, Tonyan's going to have a 0-point projection for next week being on the bye. But then you'll just sort of sneak him off of the waiver wire, put him on your bench, and get ready to start him in week 6.
Yeah, he looked really good. He's obviously got that rapport that he's built with Aaron Rodgers. With Rodgers playing the way he's been playing so far this year, he's definitely worth an ad. Grab him. Maybe you've got a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season.
Justin, let's talk about another situation that took us by surprise because I'm going to tell you right now, the best rookie quarterback for the first 4 weeks has not been Joe Burrow. It has obviously not been Tua, who hasn't played a snap yet. It's been the man who was forced into a starting role before he was ready and before he was expecting it. And it has not just been luck, and that is Justin Herbert. Okay, Justin, we watched a decent amount of that Tampa-LA game this past week, and what stood out to me is just how Herbert looked, right? And I'm not talking about numbers. I'm talking about what we're seeing with our eyes. Justin Herbert was making deep and accurate throws off his back foot. He has demonstrated legit pocket presence and a confidence to take the calculated risk. We saw one of those throws deep down the field where the wide receiver actually slowed down because he thought, oh, this is way too deep. There's no way he's going to be able to get it all the way down here. And then you could see in the wide receiver be like, oh, no, wait, this might go over my head if I don't actually run the route correctly. Justin Herbert has a cannon, and I didn't know it was going to be this good, but it's looked really good. Now, we just saw him duel it out with Brady, where Brady needed to be as close to vintage Tom as he could to hold Herbert off. I'm thinking this is the rookie quarterback to own through the first 4 weeks and for the rest of the season. If he's available in your league, it's time to stash him. If he's out there in a dynasty league especially, you scoop him up now because this is a really intriguing start to a potentially really good career.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that Anthony Lynn does not decide to throw Ty God back out there after he gets healthy. I mean, Herbert's shown that he can hang in the NFL, and it's encouraging, right? You've got a early first round quarterback that you've had to thrust into the limelight, and he's really demonstrated some really solid poise. I mean, going up against a guy like Tom Brady, the greatest of all time. I mean, it takes a lot of poise and a lot of confidence, and he definitely demonstrated that. We talked a lot about the Chargers' offensive weapons coming into the season, which is one of the main reasons why I like Tyrod as a sleeper this year. But you look at Keenan Allen, you look at, Hunter Henry, and yes, I know Austin Ekeler got hurt, but you still got Joshua Kelly, Justin Jackson, Mike Williams. Lots of mouths to feed. It's a good offense for a young quarterback to grow in.
Yeah, Justin, he almost outdueled Tom Brady, right? The greatest of all time. And in his debut, he almost outdueled Patrick Mahomes. I mean, because the word almost is in there, he's not getting the buzz he should, in my opinion. But I'm really, really excited about what this guy could be. I really think we're looking at a future QB1 for fantasy purposes. And I'm thinking like top 6, top 7 quarterback. Maybe not this year, maybe even not next year, but for years to come, I think this guy is going to be a fixture in fantasy lineups.
He looks good, and he's young. He's got a lot of room to grow. I mean, he could still develop. He's already looking like he's got, like I said, that poise to be a mainstay quarterback here in the NFL for years to come. I like the call, Corey.
Justin, let's talk about a wide receiver situation that is in no way played out the way that we would have expected. What's going on in Carolina?
Yeah, so moving into our future topic and kind of what I'm going to be looking for this coming week is the Carolina wide receiver room, and specifically DJ Moore and Robby Anderson. Now, Robby Anderson was the new addition to the Panthers wide receiver room coming into 2020. Now, we knew he was talented, right? And it's really showing in Carolina. He's really kind of taken that wide receiver one role through the first 4 weeks of the season away from DJ Moore. Now, don't get me wrong. They're both playing well, right? DJ Moore's got 288 yards receiving. Robby Anderson's upwards 377. He's close to 400 yards receiving in 4 games. He's on track to best his total yardage that he's had in his career, and he's been looking good. Now, one of the things that's really surprised me is kind of the roles that they've played, right? You kind of initially, when we came into the season, thought that Robby Anderson would be that deep threat, right? Like he's been with his in his previous stints with the Jets specifically. And, you look at DJ Moore's role, right? He's been more of that short area slot guy who's going to get, kind of close to the line of scrimmage targets, make some work out of it after the catch. And that's just not been the case. You look at Robby Anderson, his average depth of target's only 9.1 yards, while DJ Moore's is actually 12.6. And what that's really resulted in is DJ Moore receiving less of those easy targets, right, close to the line of scrimmage that he was known for getting his first couple seasons in the NFL. Now, the interesting stat that I saw as it relates to that is his percentage of targets between 5 and 15 air yards, right? So those kind of short area targets I was talking about. Last year, he was in the 55% range for those targets. This year, he's down to 41%. So he's not being targeted close to the line of scrimmage like he was last year. Now, I'm more comfortable slotting DJ Moore in as a low-end wide receiver 2 today versus the low-end wide receiver 1 he was ranked at the onset of the season here. And I'm comfortable moving Robby Anderson up into that wide receiver 2 territory. He's shown it week over week. Now, like I said with Joe Mixon last week, right? This could be one of the last and best opportunities you have to go buy low on DJ Moore. Go get him.
Yeah, I agree, Justin. I do still feel like the talent is there with DJ Moore. And this is one of those situations where you don't want to overreact with the first 4 weeks of the fantasy season. I think this is a good buy low opportunity for DJ Moore. It reminds me a lot of like a Stephon Diggs situation from years past where he's had a slow start and then he's emerged sort of as the Vikings number 1. DJ Moore has that chance. I really think DJ Moore still is the most talented wide receiver in that group. So I'm with you. I'd go get him.
Yeah, he's too talented not to be fantasy relevant throughout the course of the entire season. So, he might just be getting off to a slow start. Maybe Bridgewater begins to focus a little bit more of his attention back on DJ Moore here. It's encouraging, though. They're both startable. Robby Anderson's been a little better this year so far, but DJ Moore could very well be a wide receiver one down the stretch. Go buy low now while you can.
Justin, do you mind if we take a little stroll and talk about our beloved Patriots for a moment?
Let's do it, man.
So, Justin, if I was to talk to you about a sort of forgotten wide receiver asset early on in his career, who rose through the ranks of the Pats system as the hardest worker on the field, he eventually worked himself onto the field as the safest option at wide receiver for Tom Brady. He put together a not enough but close to Hall of Fame career and then became extremely drop happy at the end of his career. You would probably think of the former Patriot great Wes Welker, who pretty much followed that path to a T. Well, Justin, here we are again, but with the man who probably may be my favorite Patriot of all time, at least for now, and that's Julian Edelman, the former sure thing PPR wide receiver 2, who may in fact be on his last fantasy leg. Now, I have adored Edelman's moxie since he came into the Pats organization as the tough-as-nails utility player with the long flowing hair. Remember, he was playing defense, special teams, and offense in his early years in the Patriot system. That is just what you love as a Patriots fan. But eventually, he morphed into the most consistent pass catcher on the field, and he has been for the past decade. Now, we have to face the music here. Edelman, once again, has to prove himself. The poor guy just cannot seem to hold on to some of the easiest passes coming this way. It was on full display on Monday, but that's not the only time. It's been happening for about the past year and a half. And when that happens, you take a fantasy backseat to Damiere Byrd. Yeah, Damiere Byrd. So why is he my future player? Why is Julian Edelman being talked about on a fantasy show? Because I need to see him recover, right? This week before the New England bye means the most to him, in my opinion, from a fantasy perspective since the days he was trying to work himself into your fantasy lineups. I'm saying that this week will either mark his exponential fade into fantasy retirement for our rosters or his reassurance that he can still be that consistent fantasy asset. I'm starting to come to terms, Justin, with the fact that we may be seeing the swan song for one of the most consistent fantasy wide receiver 2s for the past decade and in recent memory. Thank you, Julian Edelman, but this may be the end.
Wow, yeah, bold call, Corey. I mean, it happens to the best of every player, right? I mean, you get to a point in their career where they kind of fall off, and I really hope we're not seeing that here for Julian Edelman, but it's entirely possible. I mean, this offense looks different this year. He made a couple bonehead sort of drops on Monday Night Football. He had that one that went right through his hands into Tyrann Mathieu's hands for a pick six. It was discouraging. Now, I'm not going to put a ton of stock into this past week, right? The Patriots were traveling on a short week after all the COVID issues they had with Cam Newton. If Cam can get back here and play in week 5, I'll be encouraged to see how Jules reacts here. We know that he's a fighter. He's a guy that likes to compete. I fully see him taking this as some motivation and become that guy that we've known for the last number of years here.
Yeah, Justin, that's why he's my future guy. I'm really, really curious what it's going to be like in week 5 for him. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what he does. I hope it's not the end, but this just seems all too familiar. I mean, he's been compared to Wes Welker for his whole career, and he seems to be following that path. But Justin, there we go, right? Our week 5 show for the 2020 season is now in the books. And next week, we will continue our weekly seasonal episodes. We're going to recap week 5, and we're going to get you ready for week 6. Now, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell. Download, follow, like, comment, and whatever else you have to do to show some support. I'm Corey.
And I'm Justin.
And this has been the 4th and Long Fantasy Football Show. We'll see you next time.
Royalty-free music courtesy of Ben Sound. The views and opinions expressed on today's episode are that of the 4th and Long Fantasy Football Show. Remember to like and subscribe.